Hello, everybody. I am Matt Williamson. How's it going? Got a little day home here to refresh my batteries, sleep in a nice bed before going back to Latrobe. I got one more night in the dorms. Recording this on Friday, day before the Steeler-Jaguar game coming up here. I'll be on the pregame show, or the pre-pregame show. That goes from 3 to 5, I think, with Tom Offerman. And then I'll be calling in during the pregame show, watching the game in studio, and then hosting the post-game show. So if you are listening to Steeler coverage, give me a call or you're going to hear a lot of me. But anyway, I am excited to see the Steelers match up against somebody else. However, they're also not playing many of the brand name players, nor would I. I totally agree with this approach. This is the latest list that I saw, and I'm sure there's some folks like Robert Woods that might not play a ton either, let alone the top guys. But here's the list. Aaron Rodgers. We also know Will Howard, of course, is not going to play. DK Metcalf, Jaylen Warren, Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, leaves you kind of light at tight end, Isaac Seumalo, Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter, Darius Slay, leaves you pretty light at corner, Deshaun Elliott, Patrick Queen, TJ Watt, Nick Herbig. We also know Highsmith's not going to play, leaves you pretty light on the edge. Cam Hayward, which we'll talk about that down the road, and Chris Boswell, both of whom Adam Schefter have reported are not all that thrilled with their current contract situation. I'm not going to deal with that today. I totally think that they have cases, but whatever. Sounds like the Jags' new coaching staff, teams just in a different place, are going to play Hunter, Lawrence. I would imagine their number one offensive line. I don't think we're going to see a ton of those guys late, though. I mean, maybe it's a series for Lawrence or two, but I don't think we'll see a ton of those guys. So I just kind of wanted to go position by position here and just give you some names to look at that are going to be out there that could be critical to their future, or, how can they help the Steelers? Unfortunately, I don't really have a quarterback. Of course, it would have been Will Howard, and we've talked that to death. That's an unfortunate situation. I do think newly signed Logan Woodside will probably get in the game, though. He has extensive history with Arthur Smith, both at Tennessee and Atlanta. Not that I'm super excited about him, but I think even though he just showed up the other day, he's probably going to be in there. Now, I think Caleb Johnson's one of the guys that most eyes are going to be on. And what I hope they do with him is put him in uncomfortable situations. And by that, I mean pass blocking, routes, 3rd and 8, picking up blitzes, things of that nature that he hasn't done a ton of. But I also want to see him, as physical as the Steelers' padded practices are, still running backs aren't breaking tackles and getting dragged to the ground as much as you'd really like to see. So Caleb Johnson is going to be at the very top of the list for sure of all eyes are on him type of guy. One I want to throw out to you, though, is Evan Hull. I like this guy coming out of Northwestern. I thought his last couple practices were pretty impressive. I do think the door is open for someone other than Warren, Johnson, or Gainwell to be important throughout the course of the year. I mean, that might just be practice squad, but running backs get hurt, etc. Some wide receivers to keep an eye on. Roman Wilson is absolutely in that Caleb Johnson top of the list, brand name, young, exciting category. But I would definitely put Max Hurlman in there. He may even play a little bit of running back, a slot type receiver, but he is growing on me very rapidly. Rock Taylor, who I know a lot of you have a lot of hope for. I would think he plays a ton in this game. Maybe he can, decipher him, distinguish himself a little bit more than some of these other guys that have a roster climb. And then Brandon Johnson, number 11. I feel like I mention his name every camp practice, which is a heck of a good start for these type of guys. Now, tight end, as we mentioned, is going to be really light, and I wouldn't even play Darnell Washington all that much. But number 87, J.J. Galbraith, keeps showing up practice after practice as well. I would think he plays a ton. All right, on the offensive line, I imagine you'll get a ton of Ryan McCollum at center. Fine. But really, Broderick Jones and Faltanu, I would imagine are going to see Walker and Allen, a really good pair of edge former for high picks, good players, emerging players. Maybe it's not a lot, but I'm very excited to see those matchups. I hope we get as much of that as possible. We didn't talk about the signing of Andrus Peat, but I watched his first practice. I assume he's going to play in this game. He played exclusively left tackle at the practice, but most of his career is at guard. They might have something there. I mean, as a sixth man type of guy, he's had a good career. He's a former first round pick. Seems healthy. And so Andrus Peat to me is at the very top of my list of a guy I want to watch and how they use him. Is it left tackle only, or might he play some guard in this game? That I don't know. My last name is, Dylan Cook. Dylan Cook's had a good camp, and I think Dylan Cook's played well. Interested in him for sure. But really, Stephen Jones, I've told you about this guy as well. He was a guard originally with the team, and then they moved him out to right tackle and seems to be holding his own. And that's a promotion. You know what I mean? So Stephen Jones, Dylan Cook, Andrus Peat, all those guys to me are all eyes on them. Speaking of big guys, I think that you probably won't see a ton of the first round pick, Derek Harmon. I think they're quite happy with him and don't need to push it. But the other draft pick, Wyatt Black, I think plays a lot, and I bet he plays well. And boy, this guy bats down a pass like every practice. I mean, he's going to fit right in that regard. Logan Lee, Daniel Ukele. So even Fehoko, I'm kind of a fan of. I think he's got a long shot to make the team. But who stands out amongst this really deep second, third line defensive tackle group? I think Black could have a really good showing in this instance, and same with Lee. Probably same is true for Jack Sawyer. I would think you're going to see a lot of Sawyer and Leal as the edge players, which is a king-size group, but they've gotten a lot of run together with Highsmith out. Watt's always going to only play a little. Herbig's not playing in this game. So I think those two are definitely all eyes on them. And I would keep an eye out on number 53 too, Leota. He's probably going to be a fourth quarter guy along with Welshoff, but I think Leota could be a practice squatter. And before I get too far myself here, pay attention to who the number one group is on each special teams unit, but especially punt team, and even pay attention to the number two group on punt team. That's usually a compliment for these bottom of the roster players. Even if you're like second team punt team, that means Danny Smith has some faith in you, or some, at least is tinkering with you. On the inside, Peyton Wilson, I think, will be interesting, probably in a very limited capacity, but I would imagine he's the green dot, organize everyone guy with Queen out, and I think that's perfect. Great. I don't know that I need to see a ton of Malik Harrison or Holcomb, but number 40, Devin Harper, has showed up a little bit. He can play a little high, but I think he's a playmaker. But Mark Robinson has had a really good camp to me. I mean, I would expect at this stage of his career that Mark Robinson might lead the team in tackles and make some splash plays in this game. So I think Robinson could be someone that we're talking about in that post-game show. Also, Carson Bruner, I think we need to watch. The more I watch him, I think he's going to be a core special teamer, probably for his career. I'm sure he'll play plenty of linebacker in this game. I don't think he's a great change of direction athlete. I think he's a big time special teams type of guy, like a Matakevich like career, and 7th round pick, you know. At safety, I don't know how much you see of Thornhill. Elliott's not going to play. Even Chuck Clark, do you really need that much more from him in this, advanced stage of his career? He's been good in practice. I would imagine you play Killebrew some, but do you really need to? You don't want him to get hurt on defense, obviously. But Sebastian Castro, 29. He's been a little quieter than I had hoped to this point, but that's not necessarily a knock on him, or maybe he's not what we thought he is. But Castro is definitely the safety in the whole preseason process that I want to see the most of, and probably will end up with the most snaps of any safety in the preseason, all 3 games combined. Not 100% sure if Trice is playing, what his status is, but I would think if he's good to go, this was a game that he would play a lot at corner. They signed Daryl Porter, number 39. I think he'll play a lot in this game. He's done some good things since becoming a Steeler last week. So keep an eye on him. Eccles is interesting to me. I would imagine Bishop will do most of the slot stuff, but will Eccles do some? Will Eccles only be an outside guy? So his usage is something that I'm absolutely interested in. And that's about it. I wish Kent was capable of playing, but I think he's probably going to go on an injured list here at some point. Jameson, 17, has made a few plays in camp. I don't know that they need to see a whole lot more out of Pierre. So, okay. I'm psyched for the preseason game. And there are some obvious names, Caleb Johnson, Roman Wilson, etc. To be Andres Pete's near the top of the list too. But this probably will be a little anticlimactic, folks. I think that's probably safe to say. I'm also interested, who's going to be the returners in this situation? Who might they experiment with as punt and kick returners? Just keep an eye on that. I definitely think Austin will be the punt returner and Gainwell will be the kick returner when it matters. But in this instance, maybe you just want to give some people some looks there. And I hate to throw this dude under the bus, but Robert Woods returning punts at camp muffs so many of them. I don't know why they're even experimenting with Robert Woods as a punt returner at this point. Kent could have been one of those guys, but he's not going to play and is going to be out for a little while. So other punt return options, Miller, but they kind of know who he is. That kind of interests me. Without Cordell Patterson in the mix, and certainly I don't want Warren returning kicks in this game. I'm not even sure if I want Gainwell returning kicks in this game. Who are other options? Maybe one of these wide receivers can do both and make a name for themselves. So keep an eye on that. I definitely think I hadn't thought of that angle till just now, but both returner positions to me are intriguing, just for if you need them. But again, I think we know who the guys are when it matters most, but those guys could get hurt too. Again, next time I talk to you will be after the game. Chris Halleck and I are also going to do a show, I think, on Sunday, just kind of breaking down our thoughts for the game too. Keep an eye on that. I'm going back to Latrobe Monday morning for a Monday practice, spending Monday night there, doing Tuesday practice, and then like everybody, I will be on the highway out of Latrobe Tuesday at 5-ish, because that's when practice ends, or that's when I'm off the air. So that's the schedule. There we go. Okay. We also got some joint practices on the horizon with Tampa. I assume I will be there for those. They will probably be at Accushore, but I have not gotten the details on those. We'll cross that bridge after the Jag game, but they could be really, really good. All right, everyone. Take care.